Okay, so in 2015, we had a new producer program draw, and one of the categories was a producer vendor category. At that time, the producer vendor rules were not clearly defined. And as a result of that, we ended up going into an appeal process with the that has to do with the producer vendor category. And FIRB has told us that we need to make sure our rules are crystal clear on what it means to be a producer vendor. And for us, that's really important for our the possibility of our future new producer program draws, is to make sure that we have that category crystal clear. So if we do another draw for a producer vendor, anyone who enters into that knows exactly what to expect. And to that end, we are asking people questions about what does it mean to be a producer vendor, what would be appropriate regulations, and how much of their production should be required to be self-marketed. And we have asked past new producer program applicants and our small lot permit holders to take part in this consultation, because we feel as a small lot permit holder, you guys would have a lot of experience with doing self-marketing. And as past applicants, I think they have a vested interest in sort of what we're doing in the future, because you've been interested in our programs. So my plan today was to just go through those questions that we have asked on the consultation, so that you guys are able to ask any questions you may have about that and how that could impact our new producer program into the future. So feel free to ask questions at any time. I will appear after each question. I'll explain sort of what we were trying to get out of that question, and then you guys can ask any questions about it that you would like. Now, this isn't a information gathering for BC ERE for this. We don't want you to actually answer the questions in this forum. We would prefer it if you actually went to the website or went to your email where you got the link for the survey, and to do it there. So Amanda, if you want to pull up the first question. As part of the preamble to the survey, we talk about what our different producer types are. So we have all of our producers are registered producers. So a registered producer is any egg quota holder in BC. And our regular quota holders are able to market a portion of their production at farm gate if they choose to do so. We have a category called a producer grader. So that is a producer who grades their own eggs and sells them. And then we have the producer vendor category, which is self-marketing eggs, basically it's basically at farm gate or at farmers markets, because you cannot sell into retail unless you have unless the eggs are graded.
Are you seeing my screen, Katie?
I am seeing your screen.
Okay, it's looking weird to me, but okay, as long as you see it.
I am seeing it. It is not set up as a presentation, so I can see all of the PowerPoint stuff behind it. There we go. That's better. If you want to go to the next slide, we've got the first question there. So the first question that we've put on there, and this is basically trying to differentiate a producer vendor from any of our other registered producers. So the intent of the producer vendor category is that they self-market a significant and meaningful portion of their farm's production. So what activities would you expect from someone who is self-marketing their eggs? And so this is a select all that applies. So any categories that you think a self-marketer should be doing, not that they must be doing, but that they should or could be doing, you would tick those boxes. Selling eggs at farm gate, selling eggs at farmers markets, selling eggs through a box program or community supported agriculture direct to customers, having eggs custom graded by a local grader, establishing contracts with local clients for graded product, so restaurants, markets, grocery stores, delivering your eggs to customers, or self-grading and packaging your own eggs. And we are fairly certain that this is not an exhaustive list. So if there are other avenues in which you can market eggs, it would be great to know what those are. So that is what the additional comments box is for. Does anybody have any questions? on this? I'm just looking to see if you open the chat box, there's a raise hand function as well. If you raise your hand there, I'll see you. If you write it in the chat box, I can see the question as well. So are there any questions on that? No, okay. So on to question number 2. So our consolidated order, which is the regulations that all egg producers must follow, currently defines the producer vendor as any grower who produces, markets, offers for sale, sells, stores, or transports a minimum of 75% of the regulated product grown by that producer. But you do not do any of those activities with product grown by anyone else. So we set a 75% threshold in order to be determined a producer vendor. So the way it's written, currently a producer vendor must market 75% of their flock's production in order to be classified as a producer vendor. So our question to you is that an appropriate number? Yes or no? And if you feel that 75% is too high or too low, please fill in the what you think it should be and why, what's the reasoning behind it. It's really easy just to put a number in there, but with a number in there, we're not sure what you're thinking. And so it's good to have your reasonings why in order to make change. So were there any questions on this question? Okay, on to question number 3. So if we do set a minimum amount, how do we determine that the producer vendor has met that minimum amount? So let's say it is 75% and the producer vendor managed to self-market 75 of their production for 1 month. Do we then not worry about it for forever, or is there something else that applies? So what if they have to meet their goal for at least 3 months and then we don't worry about it? Or what if they have to meet that goal for 3 months and then continue to meet that goal on a rolling average basis? So if we take a look at the whole year's sales, did they manage to self-market 75% of the production on an annual basis and continue with that? So if you select which one you think makes the most sense, and if none of those make sense to you and you have a different idea, please fill that in additional comments. Were there any questions on this one? There will be time for general questions at the end of the survey questions here for you guys. Okay, so there's nothing on question number 3, so let's go on to question number 4. In your opinion, should producer vendors have regional requirements to market their production? So what are we asking here? If you're a producer vendor in the Lower Mainland, is it okay for you to market all your eggs in Prince George? Or is it okay for you to market them in the Lower Mainland and let's say on Vancouver Island because they're neighboring regions? And the last one is, should there be any regional requirements at all? Does it really matter? And so those are sort of the options we're looking at there. And then if you have any additional comments or thoughts on that, there will be a spot for you to fill that in there as well. Are there any questions? Okay. On to question number 5.
Okay, we did have a question come in on the chat.
Okay.
Would you have to have a relationship with a grader if you had 75% sold so you could sell the last 25%?
Yes, there would need to be a relationship with a, well, I guess that is something that that isn't written in stone yet, but the question is, what are you going to do with the remaining 25% of your eggs? So if you don't have a relationship with the grader, you've got nowhere for those eggs to go, which clearly isn't an ideal situation. So if you had a relationship with a grader to take your other 75%, that is something that that can be done. So I'm hoping I answered your question. Thank you, Amanda. On to the next one. 5. So when we're looking at what our new producer program is in the long term and how we do that program, we would like to provide flexibility in the amount of quota that is offered for a new producer program applicant that is going to be a producer vendor. Because I think in some situations, 3,000 quota units may be too many if you want to do all self-marketing or if we're requiring that. And I've heard from some small lot producers that 399 birds may not be enough, but the hurdle to get from 399 birds to 1,000 with buying quota can be quite significant. So we're looking at putting flexibility in the category so that you can request somewhere between 400 and 3,000 quota units. And so there's a few ways to start an operation if we have someone coming and saying, hey, I think I can do a market for 1,500 birds, so I'd like that quota unit. So there's a few ways we can handle this. The first way is we can say, okay, here's your 1,500 quota units, go market it all, and require you to meet the threshold immediately upon starting. The second option is to, if you write in your business plan, hey, I think I can market 1,500 hens. I'd like to start with 500 because I currently have a 399 permit. I'd like to start with 500 because I could do that right away. And then within the next year, I'd like to work that up to 1,500 because I know that I can build my market in that amount of time. So then we would require you to meet those requirements that you put in your business plan to get to that point. Or we just issue you the quota and say, hey, you've got to get to your 1,500 units within 1 year or 2 years or whatever an appropriate number of years would be. So those are sort of the options that the board has thought of for what we could do in assisting producer vendors to get into production. There is also a box for additional comments because there may be other options here and other thoughts coming from people. So are there any questions on this slide? Okay, not seeing any. We will go to the next question. So if we do set a minimum self-marketing sales numbers, and we go with the last option where we just give you the amount of quota you requested and set a time frame for you to meet that goal, what type of time frame would be appropriate? So do you need to meet that immediately when we give you the quota? Is 6 months appropriate? At the end of the first year? At the end of the second year? We work with the producer vendors on their business plan, or we don't provide a time frame at all. And then so the options that we presented here may not be the only option. So again, there's additional comments for you guys to write stuff in. So any thoughts on any questions on this one? All right, on to the next one, Amanda. And so always at the end of our surveys, we include a catch-all. This is the last question of the survey. If you have any additional comments or suggestions, this is a spot where you would write it in. So this would be your last chance to provide input on the survey. So what we're hoping to do is to construct a producer vendor program that actually, that works really well and supports producer vendors as new entrants in the industry. And we really do want to set people up for success. So we really, really need your guys' feedback in order to do that. Are there any questions? These can be general questions, like survey questions, general questions.
There's a, sorry, I thought I was muted. There is a question on the chat box. How about the audits for producer vendor?
Yeah, so in 2019, we hired an inspector to go and do all of the small lot permit audits. I think she was fairly well received, and that was great. We didn't send anybody out in 2020 because of COVID, and traveling around the province didn't seem like it was an ideal situation at the time. Producer vendors who are registered producers and hold quota will be subject to all of the same audits as all of our other registered producers. So there'll be an animal care program, a BC biosecurity, Start Clean, Stay Clean, which is our food safety audit. So all of those audits will apply.
Katie, shall I unmute everybody and
Sure.
people could ask questions?
Yes, Brian.
Okay, just say you were allotted 1,500 quota for a 2-year business plan, but you far exceed your expectations. What would there be an option or contingency to go up to the minimum 3,000, or is there like, just to say, if you set up a business plan for 2 years and your expectations are say 1,500, but in 2 years you could easily double that. Would there be some sort of a contingency that you could get up to the 3,000, or once you're set, you're set?
That is an excellent question, Brian, and I would strongly recommend that you put that when you fill in the survey, put that in the additional comments.
Okay.
And I see we have had a few more questions pop up on the chat. For producer vendors, can they market through other producers as well? So just to get some clarification on that, I'm not sure what you mean market through other producers. Do you market, are you talking marketing other producers' products or marketing at another producer's farm gate?
What?
That was a, it was a, you don't know?
You have to tell that. I don't know, can you hear us?
We can hear you.
I can see you, you just, I guess. Yeah.
Chris, we can hear you. Can you offer some clarification?
Okay. Yes. So if you can sell 75% of your eggs through local markets, can that 25% be sold to another registered producer, like through the way that registered producers do?
So
or are they all only allowed, or are they only allowed to have sales through just through your own self-marketing?
So that is an excellent question. So registered producers are not able to trade eggs amongst themselves. The registered producers' eggs have to go to, they either have to be graded or that producer themselves has to sell those at farmer markets. So in terms of a producer vendor, if they sold their 75% at their own markets, the remaining eggs would have to go to a grading station to be graded. You wouldn't be able to sell them to another producer. We have another question.
So
about,
can the vendor,
yep.
Producer, so can they also grade their own eggs, the producer vendor?
Yes, if you wanted to do a registered grading, if you wanted to get a grading station, have it registered through CFIA, and I know that we do have some small lot producers out there that do that, then you would be able to have more flexibility in the selling of your eggs.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, then they could go to retail or to restaurants.
Yes, okay.
Then we have another question about animal welfare requirements specifically for the producer vendor. There wouldn't be anything special for the producer vendor. It would be, you'd be expected to follow the same animal welfare requirements that our registered producers do. And those are basically the requirements outlined in the codes of the 2017 Codes of Practice. Are there any additional questions?
Katie, can I add a couple things here?
You can.
All right.
Just so everyone knows, this is Matt Vane. He's one of our board members.
Thanks, Katie. Hey, just a question like Brian Melgers, you asked the question on minimum ask there. So say if your business plan is for 1,500, I think one thought from the board might be you stick with your business plan as set out, but there would always be opportunity for you, like other producers, to purchase quota as it comes up or off the exchange. That's one thought. So it's not like you're locked in there forever. There are opportunities for you to grow. And then just in regards to the questions about can we build a relationship with graders or producers? I think let's remember the concept here is to you're sort of a standalone on your own vending program. So you'll be doing your own sales. So meeting that 75% or whatever the number ends up being, that's sort of all on you. This program, you're not attaching yourself. You're not working with other graders. You're sort of on your own, selling to your own market as they are to their own market. So the concept is for you to always be selling all of your own eggs. That's why you don't want to over allocate quota, because your surplus is or could potentially be just enough for you to deal with, right? So it's important that when you build your business plan, that's why I like Brian's question, is build it so that you can fit to where your market's at. I don't know if that helps or provides more questions, but happy to help if I can.
Yeah, okay, so then a 2-year business plan might be a little bit short-sighted. Maybe it's a 4-year business plan for a higher quota allotment then, but I don't know how the board would view that.
Yeah, it's a good question. It would be, the things like this, that's why we're having these discussions, Brian, to sort of flush these answers out. And so the board can get a little bit of direction or advice as to how they gotta, build the program.
Fair enough. Because I mean, to be honest, I'm a small lot, and I don't get my first flock until Saturday, so I have no idea.
Okay, right, okay.
To me, so it's going to be an open, until you have a year, even for a person who's never produced and they enter the small lot or the new producer program, vendor program, and you set up a business plan, but you have no idea where that's going to go. You just got to give yourself some time to be able to get to your goals. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. And best of luck on Saturday.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian, for your questions.
Could it be a thought if you wrote in your business plan, okay, I want to get to 3,000. Year 1, could you take 1,000? Year 2, 2,000. Year 5, get up to your 3,000? Would you prorate the amount of birds you could get at one time? Or if you said, okay, yeah, so you could build, would you go to like a 5-year plan, or would that end up being too long?
And so I think that is exactly what we are looking, like those kinds of thoughts are exactly what we were looking for in, I think, questions 5 and 6, where it talks about when we do the draw, what are we expecting from new entrants in the producer vendor category, so that it's clearly laid out. So maybe it is one of those things where we say, you're going to get time to get to your quota amount. We are going to stick you to your business plan. If you don't meet your business plan perspectives, maybe the next bit of quota doesn't happen, but you can show us that your plan is to get to 3,000 quota units over 5 years. And then I guess the next question is, which goes to question 6, is what is an appropriate time frame for us to be able to give producer vendors, because whatever quota we're holding from you, we're holding for you over the course of your plan isn't being produced in the province. So there's things that we need to balance here, but I do think that it's best for us to look at all options to come up with a good plan that works. So thank you for that question.
We have another question.
Yes.
For Chris Brown?
Yep.
So what's your question?
Can you buy eggs from a grader to satisfy your existing orders when you have a changeover of flock?
So we don't have any rules at the moment saying that you can't do that. So that is definitely something that the board should consider and should be included in your consultation plan, because we have heard that that can be a problem.
Yeah.
Because when your flock is exchanged, then you're down to, could be down 6 weeks, no production from your small, your new producer permit.
Yeah, and you don't want to lose your market in that time.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what we're struggling with now, is that we've got these markets and we're on our third flock, but they've come in on Saturday, but they're not laying yet. They may not lay for another couple weeks. So, and then of course they're small, and we're probably down at least a month, and we're hoping we don't lose those customers.
Yep, that is definitely a real concern. We do recognize that.
So with production planning, with more quota, maybe you would split up your production to a couple different pens, so you don't have all of your your chickens in one barn, to allow you to keep your customers for the entire year. I mean, it would take some planning, but there would be maybe some opportunities there with a larger bird population.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Yes, Brian.
Just another question here. Now, on the new producer program, adding another category as the new producer vendor, how would that change the new producer program as it was? Is it going to change the allotments that happened to the regular new producer program, or is it going to become strictly a new producer vendor program, or can you give me a little bit of information on that?
So we have committed to FIRB to hold a new producer program in 2021. And right now we're going through this to help us determine what that new producer program looks like. It may not look anything like the last two draws that we had. It may be completely different. So we haven't gone far enough down that road just yet. We're in the initial, let's collect a bunch of information to make sure that what we do decide on makes sense.
Does
Are there
BC Egg on their exchange, when you can purchase quota, do they have priority bidding for new producers, or is everyone bidding with everyone else? Like, is it a pro rata system, or just looking at if you would get to your 3,000? Yeah, I have some dairy farm background, and the dairy farms, they have, like if you're a new producer, you have a couple of years to get your priority bid in for your milk quota. I was just wondering if BC Egg did something similar to that, or if you're bidding against everyone else.
We are similar, but very, very different. So what we do is any quota that goes on the exchange, the first 1,000 units are distributed equally amongst the producers who apply that have fewer than 6,000 units. So if you were a new producer program winner and you had 3,000 quota units, you would get access to that first 1,000 with any other producers that were less than 6,000 quota units. So there is a bit of a priority there. And then anything beyond that 1,000 quota units is divided up equally among everyone who applies. So regardless of your farm size, if there's 50 quota units available above the 1,000 and there's 25 applicants, everybody gets 2 quota units.
Okay.
And everybody pays the same for their quota units. So the price doesn't vary depending on who's applying. We did this because we recognized that it was hard for smaller producers to get into the industry. So we wanted to try and level out the playing field there.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, awesome. I just have a quick question in regards to the initial jump from being a small lot producer, having, like, right now we have, I think, 375 birds, going to 1,500. It's a pretty significant jump in, like, a small community. We were curious if there would be flexibility initially, because I know you said the minimum was 75% self-marketed. Is there an option in your business plan to create in the initial stages to have more than 75% go to a little bit less than 75% self-marketed in the event, just when you're initially getting a pulse for the community to see if you'd be able to distribute 1,500?
So this
that
is
make
why that question makes perfect sense. This is why we are asking the question on how do we determine you've met the minimum. So if we do it on, say, an annual basis for 75%, it gives you a little bit of time in the beginning to build up that market. And hopefully by the end of the year, you're at more than 75% because
Right.
the idea is to market all of it. The other option is to, if you want to go from 400 to 1,500 quota units, the other option that we put in there is maybe in your first year, you want to do 750 quota units and up it by 250 a year to give you the opportunity to build that market.
Totally, that makes sense. Yep. Okay.
Yep. So we're looking at those
That
kinds
makes
of
some
options. Yeah. Yeah, we recognize going from 400 to 1,500 would be, you'd be swimming in eggs for a while.
Yeah, it's tough to really know. Like, it seems really easy to market 400, but you know, 4 times that amount, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Right,
One other question, I guess. One other quick question. Has the type of egg been discussed, like as far as the category, as far as organic or white or free range? Is there an option for any of those when you're self-marketing?
So we haven't built anything like that into the program. In 2015, when we did do the draw, it was for a producer vendor, and that producer vendor could pick their production category.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
So that's not to say that the next program will be the same, but it is something that we've done in the past. So.
Okay. Typically geared towards like free range, I'm assuming.
Well, generally generally people associate farm gate sales with run range or organic. That doesn't mean that that's what it has to be.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? No? I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending, and I hope that you found it informative. And we are really looking forward to your responses on the survey. So enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for holding this.
Thank you.
It was
Yeah,
very
thank you for the
informative.
meeting.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Kate.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Get out of here now.